Welcome to another edition in the Totally Awesome Workshop, where I've made a fabulous invention of a way of keeping my cat from coming off in the wind. It's a bit tight, but still, well, I could paint it, I suppose. But listen, you want to know about trout fishing, there's only one place to go really. It's Avington Trout Fishery in Hampshire. I've got an exclusive interview with Cameron Craigs, who is the fishery manager there. He runs all the fish you will ever want to see if you're a trout fisherman. It's an exclusive interview for us. Come on, you're going to find some interesting facts and figures here, I feel sure. Let's get on with it. Yeah, so the first time I ever came down Avington was with late Roy Ward, who in this actual room here, I see there's a nice bar here behind your camera.
Yeah, lovely bar, new venture.
Hopefully that's going to be stocked in the future.
Oh, absolutely.
And Roy had in this room, I remember, I think you call it a raceway, with all sort of concrete trays on the floor and big glass jars with all the eggs in them. But
yeah.
Then I think at that stage they were, I think, from Sam Holland's original sort of Shasta rainbow strain, I think.
Yeah.
But I noticed with the bar in here, obviously you're not breeding from the eggs. So why is the story? What is there about that you don't do the eggs anymore?
We've sort of dabbled into it, but we've basically come to the conclusion that buying a fry-in is a lot easier than going through all the hassle and stress and worry of producing the fish ourselves. We can buy them in at 1 ounce, and they're already vaccinated. The egg stage is being taken care of, which is the dangerous part of the production cycle. So it's just a lot easier to get them in and buy them in rather than try doing it ourselves.
When you say vaccinated, the egg or the fry? I don't understand.
The fry will actually be it'll be an in-feed vaccination. So the fry when they're being fed, and it's vaccinated against ERM, which is enteric red mouth, which can really sort of hit you hard if you get that. So
is that a sort of foot and mouth cattle, but in the fish farm?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, that's it. And as I say, we buy them 1 ounce, and that's all taken care of. Whereas if we would have to do it ourselves, it's another expense, it's another effort. So it's a lot easier that we just buy our fry in. What
numbers would you be shipping in, and what time of year would you bring those in at?
We get a delivery of one delivery a year of 15,000 fry, 1 ounce fry, and that should see us, providing we don't get any sort of disasters on the fish farm, which...
That's like a year's stock.
A year's stock of fish, yeah. I mean, you probably expect to lose maybe sort of 1,000 to 2,000 of those fish.
Just as regular fry mortality?
Yes, exactly that, yeah. And then throughout there, sort of when they get sort of a pound, you always lose 1 or 2 on the fish farm, but you're always picking up 1 or 2 every day. So. And
what type of feed size do you have to? Is it a special fry feed, a special protein for the fry? Do they need extra power, as it were?
When we first get the fry in, it's a 3 mil pellet, sort of a high protein fish meal pellet that they'll be fed when they come in.
So in that we call it the fry pond, what sort of stock density do you have? How long would you keep them in there before they get graded out?
Okay, yeah, well, we've got 2 fry ponds which are obviously netted for protection against any predators, and the 15,000 will be split between those 2 ponds, so 7,500 will go into each pond, and then they're probably in there till they reach about 3/4 pound a pound, which probably takes a year and a half. And then they can go out into the larger ponds when they're obviously a suitable size to the predators, herons, that sort of thing. They're getting a bit too big for them.
You don't suffer for like mean cotters, anything like that. I saw the netting out there, so that one assumes that's bird-orientated predators.
Yeah. I mean, cormorants, not so much on the fish farm because you've always got people on site. So the cormorants tend to not bother you, but I mean there are otters about. Yeah, often, especially when we have snow, you'll easily pick their prints up and see exactly. Normally that identifies where you've got a hole in your fry nets. You can follow the tracks to see where they've snuck in. So we do have, I would say, a good problem with otters, but keep sort of maintaining the fry nets, keep checking there's no holes in them. We have had like a sort of a small electric fence around the perimeter of the fish farm as well.
Just to keep them out?
Yeah, but it's...
ongoing problem. Ongoing battle by the sound of it.
Absolutely, yeah.
The next song is when you say you've got some other ponds, they're the ones in front of the main buildings here. So they're staying there for how long? What size would they go to in there?
What, the larger fish?
Yeah, when you come from the fry, you move them on after, say, 3/4 pound.
Yeah.
The next stage,
And then they're probably, then they're sort of in those ponds till they reach sort of stocking size, which our minimum stocking is 4 pounds. So they'll be in those ponds for sort of about 2.5 years, something like that. And then they'll be gradually through the year, they will be graded out, and eventually, as they're graded, they're stocked into the lakes.
So it represents quite an investment in the fish farm industry, just the supply of food to keep those fish to a high density, because I know it's always going up in cost.
Yeah,
it must be hard to keep it down, for what I'm trying to say.
Absolutely, yeah, especially demand for the availability of fish meal, that's sort of down. If not, they'll keep putting it up and up. It's about, we use about 4 or 5 tons a month.
Goodness me, yeah.
Fish food at the moment, so.
And where's that? Is it made in like Europe, England, here? Where does it?
Well, I think the fish meal sort of sourced from sort of abroad. I think sort of Peru, that sort of area.
Oh, really?
Yeah, fish meal sourced from there.
Yeah.
And obviously gets a company's called Skretting. They supply all our fish food, and there's other benefits with the company. They'll have their own vets, and that's so if we have a problem,
yes,
they will come out and sort of give us a bit of advice and that sort of thing.
Okay. Now, years ago, I remember they used to put something in the pellets to make the fish go pink or the flesh.
That's it. Yeah,
that's all stopped now. I understand.
No. It's still
used
astaxanthin is the pigment, which obviously makes this lovely the meat lovely and pink. It's just again, it won't affect the taste or anything. It's just purely so the
visual.
Fish looks. Yeah, if the angler's got a fish and it's sort of pale, it doesn't look right. But they want to see that pink flesh. But it doesn't affect the fish, fighting quality, taste, anything like that.
And the average size here is what? Your average stock fish? What do you put them in at?
We say average is 4 pounds, but currently it's probably 5.5 pounds at the moment. So up to double figures in the lakes. The way we select our larger fish is when we're grading out. Quite often, when you look at the trout, you can see the scales got like a shiny appearance to them.
Yes.
And that means they're stretching. The scales are stretching, so that fish is obviously growing very quickly. So obviously we'll put that fish aside in one of our on-growing ponds.
I've never heard of that before.
Yeah. But quite often, most of them, you just pop a few fish aside in the on-grow and just forget about them for sort of 2-3 years.
And they're going to be the ones that come through big. There's no selective strain, as it were, that you pick out the biggest of the big necessarily. It's going to keep growing and get bigger.
No, nothing like that. It's just, as I say, this shiny scale appearance. That means the scales are stretching, and that fish is growing very quickly. So it's probably a little bit bigger than all the fish of the same age.
So they go into the big fish pond.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what size pellet do you feed them on, and for how long?
They'll be on 8.5 mil pellets, and they'll stay on that diet, on that size of pellet till finally they'll be stocked into the lakes.
What would be the older? They used to say rainbows never live past 4 years. What's that? What's the story on that? Because you're out of Sparsholt College, so I know you know the answer to that one.
Yeah, I'll try my best. Well, we say it's sort of 10 pound plus rainbow trout is probably about 3.5-4 years old. But when you're looking at sort of 20 pounds, you're really getting to the end of its life, which is maybe sort of 5 years. But we never like to push it. We've had instances, I think it was 2 years ago, we had a very large rainbow trout. One day it was fine in the on-grow ponds. We came in the morning, it was upside down, and we got it out and we weighed it. It was 28.5 pounds.
Oh, that's the biggest ever from Avington.
That would have been the fishery record, because the fishery record currently stands at 28 pound.
What a shame that wasn't in the lake, isn't it?
Yeah, it was dead weight 28.5, but who knows?
Yeah,
it could have been pushing 30 at one stage in its life. But
now, when you put them in the lakes, those big ones, there's always anglers say, "Oh, it's just been in there for 1 day." But how long do some of those fish stay in there? I know for fat browns stay in there a long time because I can't catch them and I've seen them.
Yeah.
There's a huge difference between catching a brown and catching a rainbow. They're two totally different.
Oh, absolutely.
Fish.
Yeah.
How long would one stay in your lake before they get caught? Generally, a few weeks or?
Quite often with the rainbow trout, and they're pretty much they're pretty true. When we stock them in one night, quite often these big rainbow trout are coming out the next day. Somebody might hook and lose a fish, and then it could stay in for a couple of months.
Yes.
But as you say with the browns are different. They're stocked in the evening after we finish, and next morning they just take a couple of days just to settle in, I think, a bit longer than the rainbow trout do. And I mean, quite often we've had brown trout that have been in the lakes for months, the whole summer, and not come out.
And they do literally go for the springs near the bottom. They like the colder water.
Yeah, in the shaded areas. Quite often those big London plane trees down the lakes, they'll enjoy the shade under those trees quite often. And funnily enough, our record brown trout, which is 22.5 pounds, according to 2008, which was equal the record of 2001, that fish had been in the lakes for about 3-4 months. So
really?
When it was first stocked, it would have been over the fishery record. But
and then they drop back in weight a bit.
Yeah, quite quickly. They're not getting any pellet, and it takes quite a long time to switch onto natural food, and that natural food wouldn't sustain their weight anyway. So
that would be my next question is, if you had, say, a 3 pound rainbow and it was stocked in there, would they survive? This is not just your fishery, general fisheries that don't have a lot of fry feed, because I always think the only way they're going to grow is if they've got sticklebacks, minnows, small roach and stuff like that, high protein stuff to eat. Yeah. But on insects, they're not going to get very big, are they?
They're not going
nationally, on a national basis.
No, I mean, you see fish, you can sort of spot the fish down there that have been in for a long time. They're very slim fish. Their fins have obviously perfect fins that have been in there for a long time. But I think they'll happily survive for sort of a couple of years down the lakes. Definitely.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
When I first came here, Cameron, it was a lot of the rage was this cheetahs and tigers and brook trout, and they broke different British records here. So are we going to see those again? You know, all those different crosses.
Well, since I've been here, we haven't had any of those species, but I mean, I think we would love to try something different. Anglers are always interested in catching. It's like the blue trout. I think they love a bit of diversity, but unfortunately now we've got problems with being able to stock these fish because we're linked onto the river system and that sort of thing. That's our biggest problem, getting permission to stock. We're not in enclosed water because we are linked onto the river Itchen. So.
But what about the fact if those were triploids, or if they're triploids?
Yeah, triploids. I mean, that should be fine. They're not going to cause any trouble. But I suppose it's getting not many fish farmers are doing these sort of breed. They seem to have gone out of fashion a bit.
So it was a fashion thing, really, wasn't
it?
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah. I mean, various other fisheries, they tried the landlocked salmon and that sort of thing, but it never really took off.
Now, one that it sort of seems to, there's a fashion icon, or it seems to hold the course more than the cheetah and the tiger, is the Dameron Blue. Now, you've got huge ones here, and I saw some in the stock pond as well.
Yeah.
So give us a bit of a story on that, on the history of the Damerons.
Well, the blue trout, it's the same as a rainbow. It's just a genetic variation on the rainbow trout, and as you say, it is a very popular species. We always get anglers coming in here. The first thing they'll ask, have you got any blues? Have you got any browns? And that's really what they're into. And we've currently got a few. Actually, our blue record, the fishery blue record, is, I think it's 20 pounds 8 ounces, which is mounted in the tackle shop next door. And we've got currently a few on site at the moment. We don't buy them in. I've been trying to get Bob to buy some blues from Mike at Dameron, but unfortunately he's not letting me at the moment. But
are they expensive fish to buy in the first place then?
Yeah, they'll be a little bit more expensive. I'm not exactly sure on the cost, but
so same growing rate.
Yeah, exactly.
Nothing different.
Nothing different. Whereas obviously your brown trout, they're always a little bit behind, a bit slower growing than the rainbows and the blues.
Now, I saw that huge brown trout on the wall in there. What's the story on those browns? I mean, they represent, must have a huge input of pellets, as it were, i.e. cost. What's the growth rate on those? How slow growing? How long do they live? What's the general lifespan of those?
Yeah, I mean, very slow growing. I mean, when I said before about a £10 rainbow might be sort of 3.5 years old, a £10 brown trout would be sort of, you could put another year or so on that, maybe even more than that. So £10 brown could be sort of 4.5 years old.
Will they live longer than the rainbow generally, or the general lifespan?
I'd say about the same really. Once you're sort of getting into high double figures, you're really pushing
the limits.
Any fish. Yeah, that's why we tend to, with the fish on the larger fish on site, we'll try and push a few sort of up to that £20 mark, but a lot of them, you don't want to lose a fish like that. We've done it before, like that big 28.5 pounder we lost on the fish farm. We'd rather get them in the lake at sort of mid doubles, and then somebody to catch them, definitely.
And looking at water levels, which is, you know, as we're filming, we're in the grips of an alleged drought. That you wouldn't think this with all the rain that's been coming down. So how do you fare with the water levels here? How does it work on the water tables and the rivers?
I mean, I know we've had the last 2 weeks, we've had a lot of heavy rain, but levels the river and the lakes the fish farm came up slightly, but a couple of days they dropped back down. The problem is that it was just surface water, it hadn't penetrated the groundwater, the aquifers, which need to be replenished. So we just we could do plenty more of this rain. And the problem this time of year, all the vegetation, the trees, they're taking up all the water and it's not getting down there. So obviously with the low water levels, we've got reduced volume of water on the fish farm, and the amount of water coming through the fish farm's reduced. So we've got exactly the same amount of fish as we normally do on site. So it's giving them the space they need, you know. That's just hope we don't get a hot, dry summer, which... And
the main cause of concern for a fish farm, I think, is it low oxygen contents in the summer that you know, with a high density of fish in a pond, you can start losing fish.
Oh, absolutely.
What's the distress level or distress temperature for, say, the standard rainbow trout?
I mean, ideally, rainbow trout love a temperature sort of 10, 11, 12 degrees, but once you're getting into sort of 15, 16, then the fish are getting really stressed, and we will have mortalities if we get that high, which it has done a couple of years ago on the fish farm. And
now, if those fish were stocked in the lake, would they survive any better or not necessarily?
Yeah, they've got a bit. Yeah, definitely in the lakes, they've got a bit more. The sort of stock, the density in the lakes is nothing like it would be on the fish farm. So
what I'm trying to say from the angler's point of view is, if it's a very hot summer, you should be putting all those fish in the lakes.
Yeah, well, hopefully it won't come to that. Hopefully,
hopefully,
and we have got aerators and that sort of thing in place.
That's those bubblers I've seen.
Yeah, you've seen them going. Yeah, but,
and you run those just purely to keep the oxygen content.
Absolutely, yeah.
Now, getting out into the angler's side of things, out on the lakes there, obviously the best time for visually spotting fish, because Avington's famous for a clarity of water, you know, is in spring, summer, autumn, you know, when you've got the sun high and water's clear. But that also generates a lot of weed bloom, so how do you control that?
Well, we've got two problems with weed. Quite often the mare's tail in the lakes, which is a bit of a problem, that'll grow up from the bottom of the lake and then it'll tend just to pop through the surface. So controlling that, we've got our own small weed boat with sort of blades on the front. So basically it'll just take it down to what level you want and just take the top off really. And then we also get blanket weed can be a bit of a problem in the summer, and sort of we get this. It's like some organic breakdown on the bottom, and on hot days that'll just float up to the surface and it looks like sort of a brown scum on the surface.
It's a nightmare for fly fishing.
Yeah, it spoils your presentation, your flies getting covered
Stick on
in
it. On the
leader.
leader.
So for those two problems, we've got a large weed net, which is basically, it has floats on the top, and then it's about probably a foot and a half deep with leads on the bottom, and we can just stretch that across the lake, and then one man either side, and just slowly drag it across the lake, and then gradually gather it into a bowl, and then by hand take that out using rakes and nets.
What about when I've heard of them putting bales of barley, I think it is, in the water tray? Is there anything in that, or is that just only for tiny ponds?
I think for a lake the size of ours, I think it works, but you want a hay rick. You need so much of it to make it effective, that barley straw. We have tried it before, putting sort of big sort of nets with barley straw in them at the inlet of all the lakes, but again it's not going to be enough to really make any difference. The most important thing is that the inlet and outlets of all the lakes are clear and you've got as much water as you can flowing through those lakes. As long as you can do that, you're doing all right. Yeah.
And no chemical treatment really for that. It's a manual thing, this weed control.
Unfortunately, it is. Yeah, every day, every morning, sort of 7 o'clock in the morning, we'll be in before the fishery opens doing that. But unfortunately, by the end of the day, it's all come back up again. So you're back next morning doing exactly the same thing. We don't like, the owner Bobby doesn't like to do no treatment, chemical treatment. So as you say, it's all manual.
Well, Cameron, I appreciate your help very much, giving us an insight, a sort of potted history into the famous fish farm, because it is famous down here at Avington. And hopefully, next time I see you, I'll have a fishing rod in my hand.
Lovely, good to see you, Graeme.
Thanks, Cameron.